Hello and welcome to Ignore the Bell. Today we are talking about the first two Indiana Jones movies, the very good 1981 picture Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark, and the 1984 film Indiana Jones and the Raider of the Lost Child. I have no idea what's going on with him in Short Round, but we are going to discuss. Hello, I'm Nathan.
I'm Tyler.
And I'm Luke.
So like I say, we are talking about the first two Indiana Jones films in this podcast, and then in the next podcast, it's probably going to be the absolute like the actual next podcast, and we're going to talk about the final, well, I guess the next two Indiana Jones films, because we are going to get 5 in 2021? Is that when it's coming out?
I don't know. Eventually. I've been saying that there'll be another one for a long time.
No, I was just researching this. Like, it's happening. It's just when it's coming out.
I feel like it's going to be one of those things that's continuously pushed back, where they're just like, oh yes, we're going to make it. Don't worry, it's coming in 2020. Oh yes, 2020 comes. Oh yes, don't worry, it's coming in 2022.
Right. That all of the people involved don't really want to do it, but they feel compelled. So they're just hoping that one of the key players is going to die before it actually goes into production.
Right.
Who's it going to be?
Oh dear.
It's like
starting a
Deadpool way of avoiding a bad movie. So yeah, you've got that to look forward to, folks. We're going to get into the next two films in the next podcast, and basically the idea was that we wanted to break it up into two different parts, because Tyler and I, when we were first developing this, like, Luke is the one who came up with the idea for this topic, but then we were trying to figure out how do we split it up, and I think it was you, Tyler, who said that we should kind of do like good bad, right? And so I think I'm, because I really don't like Temple of Doom. I know a lot of people do, but that's kind of, I think Temple of Doom is very much the Crystal Skull of the first couple films, or even of the trilogy. It's, we'll get into it. Yeah. But in any case, we're going to save that for after we actually do the title. But we do have a sponsor, well, two sponsors for today, because as Tyler pointed out, we're sellouts with our fake sponsors. So we're really collecting that in, illusory ad revenue. Tyler, you've got the first sponsor.
Yeah, so our first sponsor right here is Hipster Fedoras. For when you really, really want to look like you really don't care.
That is a good look. A lot of people would pay a lot of money to look like that.
Oh,
like they just don't care. And our other sponsor for today is StopHumanTrafficking.org. Every year, thousands of children from Central Asia are stolen, and they are put into human trafficking for unspeakable, awful things. And every year, out of those thousands of children, approximately 40% are kidnapped by Indiana Jones. We need to stop this monster as soon as possible. Please visit StopHumanTrafficking.org. I really hope that's not a real website, by the way. But if it is, then I don't know. I'm just in big trouble. But
well, I mean, they might not want to be associated with us, but hey, like, we do want to stop that. So
legitimately, Indiana Jones is absolutely the villain in Temple of Doom.
Yes.
All right, we will see you on the other side. I hope you enjoy, folks.
Oh man, I wish this discussion could go on forever.
Ignore the bell. We're gonna keep going, people.
Okay, we just checked, and StopHumanTrafficking.org is not a real website, which we're unsure if that's a good thing or not. Right. Initially, I was like, oh, good. And then it's like, wait, oh, no.
Yeah, it kind of should be, we hope.
Right. There are organizations out there. They just didn't choose to actually use that domain. So,
yes. Yeah.
All right. So, Indiana Jones, the first two films, Indiana Jones and Raiders of the Lost Ark, and then Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. These two films are so different from each other. It's hard to even like see this. I mean, they are just so radically different that it's hard to understand how they are part of the same film franchise. But I feel like I'm almost to the end of Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. And I feel like Raiders just stands out from the rest of them in general.
Mm. Wow, that's yeah, that's interesting. It is very much it inspired so much. I mean, you've got like fedoras were not, a crazy huge thing before.
Okay.
Um, but
That's
but no,
just such an
like
interesting
you...
place to start. I'm like, when we're talking about like the cinematic importance of
I'm
Indiana
sorry.
Jones, you're like his hat.
Stupid fedora
Can we
threw me
check the
off.
popularity of leather jackets through the decades?
Let's draft this popularity of fedoras and see like just that spike,
Oh my God.
1981.
Yes. No, but genuinely, there are like a lot of different, um, like if you talk about like Lara Croft, the Tomb Raider franchise or the Uncharted series, things like that. They're all sort of based around that kind of the Indiana Jones style of, yeah, I want to go get the relic, and there are bad people who want to use the relic for some mystical evil purpose.
Right. Yeah, but even George Lucas and Steven Spielberg, weren't they mostly doing this as an homage to the serials from the 1930s and 40s? Like, I don't know enough about those, but I know from the little bit of research that I've been doing, and you can see like the influence of it, that it was very much supposed to be, um, you know, I always get them mixed up. It's not anachronistic, but it's atavistic, right? That it's supposed to be a film, and I did that with the Stranger Things podcast, and I said anachronistic, but really it's atavistic. It's something that it's you're filming in a style and telling a story in such a way that really it's outdated. We don't tell stories quite that way anymore, and that's what they were trying to do as an homage to those types of stories that you got in the 1930s and 40s. But and so you are right that you see the influence, but basically what I mean by this is that Raiders stands out because I think that Raiders is, in general, it is a pretty sincere film. It's not slapstick, it's not goofy, it's not silly, and it's not a kids film, right?
Mhm.
It's really not. But the rest of them are all kids movies. And I really do think this is like, I mean, I thought I would save this for later in the podcast, but I'll just say it right now. I think that if you haven't seen these movies when you're really young, I don't think you'll really like them that much, except for Raiders. I think that you'll like Raiders of the Lost Ark if you are an adult and you're seeing it for the first time. But I think most people, their feelings about these films are influenced by the fact that they saw them at pretty important ages where, it ends up having a much bigger impact on you as a result of that.
Hmm. Yeah, I think you're right because, yeah, like even because I basically grew up with these movies because I would just watch them like all the time. Um, so I do think my opinion of the Temple of Doom is a little different than it would be had I seen it later.
Yeah.
Especially Short Round because he was always like one of my favorite characters because just how funny he was and all that. But then like yeah, seeing it later, it's like
Yeah.
well, what
That's
were
the
they
thing.
thinking?
He's funny if you're a kid.
Yeah.
But he's
Right.
not funny
Yeah.
if you're an adult. And
Yeah.
that's exactly it. And it's like it kind of feels like the criticism of Return of the Jedi with the
Yeah.
Ewoks, of
Yeah.
adults who saw that when like for the first time seeing it as adults, and they looked at it and they're like, this is so transparent. You obviously put them in the movie to make it more kid friendly, more family friendly, and to give some characters within this film that the kids can look at and go like, I like the Ewoks.
Yeah.
And that's what it feels like in every movie hereafter. It's that in and I mean, like we'll try to restrict ourselves as much as possible just to Raiders and Temple of Doom. But Short Round is very obvious an example of that. But even the fact that like they've got all of these child laborers,
Hmm.
then I think it's not you're not enslaving adults. And you anyway, so it's like you've got a bunch of children being featured in the movie, and even the Indian king, like boy child, like king child, that really young guy who's, I don't know, the same age as Short Round, then you know what I mean? Like they have the foil of that child villain and then the child hero, and it's just as an adult, then you're just like, really? Like, now I'm gonna watch these two guys fight, like, because that's literally what happens in it. And then they kind of have the same moment that like Indiana Jones has with like other characters, and it seems, I don't know, the whole thing. And I'll be honest, I saw Raiders when I was fairly young, but I do think that Raiders holds up even if you don't see it as a child. But I did not see Temple of Doom until I was like 20. And then I didn't see The Last Crusade all the way through until I was probably 20 or so. And so I think that that's partially where I'm coming from. But I don't have an issue if somebody likes Temple of Doom. But I just think that it's a good film for children.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's it's interesting because this sort of makes me think that it's that it was done in large part as a reaction to Raiders of the Lost Ark, with its influence on children, on, you know, like Halloween costumes, how like every kid wanted to be Indiana Jones. So it's like, okay, well, yeah, here's a character that could eventually be Indiana Jones in Indiana Jones. And you're like, wait, this is kind of weird. But like as a kid, then you're like, yeah, see, Indiana Jones could teach me all that stuff and I could be as awesome as him.
That's exactly it. And a lot of people will point to The Last Crusade and they're going to say, no, because The Last Crusade goes back to what Raiders is in a lot of ways. And I'm like, no, it doesn't. If you're looking at it, even the way it starts, and it starts out with young Indiana Jones.
Yeah,
right?
That's true.
And then him looking up to this older archaeologist who, like, I mean, that he got his identity from that guy. I have got so much to say on that, which we'll save for the next podcast. But it's like, it's very much, if you were a child watching that, then you're looking at, and I guess my issue is, I look at this and a kid will watch that and they will see a kid doing stuff that is just so impressive, and you look at that and you go, wow, he's a kid and he's doing that. And I look at that and as an adult and I go, he's a kid and he's doing that, like, how stupid do you think I am? Children can't do that.
Right.
And so if you're watching as a kid, it's you can kind of identify with that or aspire to that and think, I want to be just like that. But as an adult, then you look at that and you go, this is just silly.
That's actually a pretty interesting point, because like the Last Crusade was actually, like, when I was growing up, that was my favorite Indiana Jones movie. And although not really for that reason, but I think that was like, because the beginning always bored me when I was a kid, even when I was a kid, because I was just like, this isn't an interesting adventure. It was just like, I thought it was like a pretty boring start when I was a kid. But like, that's one of the things, again, that I really like about Raiders of the Lost Ark, is the opening is amazing. But
absolutely.
So I do think the perspective is totally different from kid and adult for these movies, mostly just the later ones. But
yeah, that's exactly it. And I don't know enough about the rating system from the 80s to know, because I know that, as best I understand it, and I've done just a little bit of research, but not enough to know for sure. But I guess they didn't have PG-13 as a rating at the time.
That's correct.
So did it just go from PG to what? It went PG to R in the US?
I think so. Yeah.
And so what was Raiders of the Lost Ark?
PG.
I think, yeah.
Oh, okay. That's a hard PG.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
yeah, and that, honestly, Raiders of the Raiders of the Lost Ark was one of like the last films to be released as rated PG, I believe, or it may have been the first one that was PG-13. It's like right there though, because it did cause quite a bit of outrage, and between it and Gremlins and I think even like Temple of Doom, like all of those just really pushed created this need for another rating that was in between.
Yeah, I think it's.
Although,
Go ahead, Luke.
honestly, I think that PG-13 is used way too much now, though, because
It is.
like everything is PG-13. But I'm like, like, why is Star Wars PG-13? Like, I'm like, there's nothing that is like a kid shouldn't be like watching if they're not 13. I'm like, I watched Star Wars when I was a kid and I wasn't even episode 3 and I wasn't like, this is horrifying. And same
Right.
with the Temple of Doom when like the guy's like ripping people's hearts out and I'm like, I wasn't like, oh my goodness, this is horrifying. I was just kind of like, oh, this is a movie. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
And I mean, like every psychological study I've heard on this, when it comes to what happens when children are watching violent things in the media, it's that children do make the distinction between real life violence and um, dramatized violence or cartoonish violence, right? And I mean, even as an adult, that I'm the same way. Like I can watch a horror movie and it's fine, but I do not want to. Every time you hear about this, like like especially like a few years ago with like ISIS when they were beheading people on YouTube and stuff like that. No, I do not. I don't want to watch that video. I don't
yeah,
want to see a real life
Yeah.
murder. No, no, no,
yeah.
no, 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 no. If it's a movie, though, okay, that's a whole other story because I understand that it's, special effects and it's dramatized
Yeah.
and the people are actually okay. And children can make that distinction.
Mhm.
But even the deaths, though, that they have in these movies, but especially like from Temple of Doom going forward, the deaths are just, they're such PG deaths.
Yeah.
Like they really are. You
Yeah.
never yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
The
I mean,
things that happen to these people, and then like the actual consequences of it, like they go flying or like
Yeah.
they get there's a
yeah.
detonation right beside them,
Yeah.
and you don't see limbs flying off from their body. It's just a person doing this.
Yeah.
Although I do find that is a very popular thing to happen in movies, is just people go flying when an explosion happens.
I
So
I
I
know,
give that a little bit of a pass, but
but that's what I hate, and that's why I
yeah.
don't really like watching action movies
Mhm.
uh, if they're not rated R or above. And I mean, I
Yeah.
still have an issue with the rating system in part, and I do want to explain this for people. I know I've said it before, but just for Americans, just to be aware, we don't use the same rating system in Canada. They don't use the same rating system in other parts of the world. So that's why I always have a little bit of trouble because I'm always trying to remember, wait, is it 14A? Is it 18A? And then we have the NC something in Canada.
No, in Canada we
That's
have
the US one.
14A, 18A, and then R. And in the US, then then you guys have PG-13, R, and then NC-17.
NC-17. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But see, that's the thing is that like there's different rating systems.
Yeah.
And so it sometimes gets confusing with it. But the thing is, like, that's one of the things that I hate about the MCU films is that, and it's obvious why they're toning down all of the violence, but you can't, because they obviously want to get as much as they possibly can from ticket revenue, right, from the
Right.
box office, and that if you restrict children from seeing it, then you're going to lose a ton of money, but you're going to sacrifice a whole bunch of realism, stakes within the film,
Mhm.
when when they get injured and it sure doesn't look like they're injured.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's my main issue with like movie ratings in general is that it restricts people from watching movies. If it's just a guideline, then it's fine.
Yeah.
But when you're actually saying, no, you can't watch this film unless you're over 13 or accompanied by an adult, well, then that's problematic. And
Yeah.
like the same thing with an R rating or for us 18A. Like it's just you shouldn't be saying like you cannot watch this film unless you're this specific age.
Yeah, and I know, I mean, I've studied a lot with the rating system, and there's a really interesting history behind it. I I think maybe we might even do a podcast on that, because there really is a whole fascinating history to it.
Yeah.
But in any case, you have this kind of in between, like this PG and this R film, and so let me try to focus this a little bit more. So let's just focus in on Raiders of the Lost Ark and try to go through this as best we can, and then we'll get into Temple of Doom. So Raiders of the Lost Ark, you guys are right that it has got easily the best opening sequence in this series, in the Indiana Jones series.
Absolutely.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
And so it's one of the best opening sequences. And then you've got the best villains that you can possibly choose, Nazis. I mean, like I understand that they're starting to get some support now by a bunch of like freaks out there, but generally speaking, we can all agree that Nazis are just evil and they're the bad guys. So aside from some radicalized like weirdos on the internet, then overall we all can look at this and everybody can say, yes, those are definitely real life villains who did awful stuff, and we all know that it was wrong. Like, so when you're watching it, then you just immediately know what to do with them. And it makes such perfect sense. I think about this, like, Tyler, when we were talking about Stranger Things, we were talking about the importance of it being in the 1980s. And I was really emphasizing the fact that it's important because it was part of the Cold War. And therefore, you had to keep up with what the Soviets were doing. So if the Soviets are doing mind control experiments and you don't know whether they're going to make a breakthrough or not, then the US, whether it stretches your ethics or not, you better do that too, because if there's anything there that could be weaponized, then you better get there before your mortal enemy, the Soviet Union, gets there. And in this, then you look at this and you say, well, it makes sense that the Nazis would be the villains in this, because there is this whole fascinating sub-history that Hitler was, as best I understand it, I don't know a lot about Hitler. I guess I can some people really do study him for good reasons, historians, right? I did have a minor in history, so I'm not disparaging that, but I'm just saying I don't read about Hitler very much. So please forgive my ignorance, or maybe I shouldn't apologize for that, but I'm not that interested in him.
Right.
In any case, I do know that he was interested in the occult, and he wanted to explore different myths and potential supernatural objects and all kinds of stuff like that he had a fascination with that. And I don't think that's surprising, considering how twisted he was, that he would, I don't think that you've got really good, pious people who are like, hey, I just want to see the world be a better place and I want to make things better for everybody, which is why I'm trying to find the original book of Satan in order to open up a portal to hell. Do you know what I mean? Like, somebody who's a good person probably isn't looking for those types of artifacts, but somebody who's trying to annihilate an entire race of people probably is going to turn to whatever he possibly can to either help with that or just because he's into weird stuff. So I look at it and I'm like, Raiders is such a good film because of who your villains are, and that you would have to have this underdog American who's kind of going it alone in enemy territory because the Nazis were taking over parts of Northern Africa and, of course, across Europe. Then it's like, it all makes so much sense. And yeah, that's what's great about Raiders, which is also where I have serious issues with Temple of Doom. But yeah, I'll let you guys comment on that.
Oh man, that you are absolutely right. That that's a fascinating look at it. And yeah, the villains. There's a reason why characters like Batman or Spider-Man are as well revered as they are. It's because of the villains. It's not because of the character. It's because of the villain. And with Indiana Jones, I don't even remember who the villains are in Last Crusade, and I just watched that like a few months
Right.
ago.
It's the Nazis again, but it's not the same kind of thing.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah.
Because it's not the Nazis. It's that American who just wants to live
Yeah.
forever. It's not like, because with Raiders of the Lost Ark, the whole point of trying to get the Ark of the Covenant is that essentially any army who is in possession of it is going to be unstoppable, right? This is essentially the biblical history behind this. And so since it goes missing, the idea is, well, if we, the Nazis, can go and find it, and since we are already expanding across Europe and into Northern Africa, if we're in possession of this too, combined with German engineering and might and all of that, then we are literally going to become unstoppable. And that's how we can establish the Third Reich across the world.
Yeah.
Now, the quest for the Holy Grail, what does that do to advance Nazi military strategy? Right? And that's like, it's not good. Like, okay, you get to live forever. And it's like, well, is that really? I mean, for one thing, you're getting into pure myth when you deal with that. The other one, and some people might dispute me on this, but I'm just going to say, you have actual biblical evidence for the Ark of the Covenant. Now, as far as the Holy Grail, everything associated with it, the supernatural properties associated with it, this is, there's no biblical evidence to back that up, but there is, if you're using the Bible as a text, whether you're treating it as a historical text or as a spiritual religious text or a literary text, at least within the text itself, then it explains what exactly the Ark of the Covenant does, right?
Right.
You don't get any of that with the Holy Grail, right? That this is essentially an invention, and as best we can tell, it's just like an invention that was founded upon nothing, right?
Right.
And so that's my issue with Temple of Doom, is that you're dealing with a myth that really doesn't even exist. Indian people have huge issues with Temple of Doom, and they did at the time, because they're looking at this saying, that's not Kali. Kali isn't that type of god. All of this stuff that you're saying, you just manufactured all of it. You invented the whole thing. You're not going with an established myth. And I think also I have issues with them going outside of Western civilization myth with Indiana Jones, but I'll save that for after. And then, like I say, with The Last Crusade, it's not going back to something where it's like, well, we have all kinds of historical evidence that this is a real thing, and that at least people at the time believed that it was capable of doing this. You don't have that, and then you get into Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and you've got straight up aliens. So that's where I'm like, Raiders is a good film in part because of what you've got. So it makes sense why the Nazis would get this. But in The Last Crusade, it doesn't make sense, because it's just that one American who's like, I don't care what the Nazis do with this. I just want to live forever.
Right.
Yeah.
And he's essentially the villain. So I'm like, even the Nazis aren't the villains in this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm really glad that you brought that up about the Indian mythos being included in Temple of Doom and detract from the film because of the inaccurate, offensive, honestly, portrayal of Indian culture.
Yeah.
In so many ways.
So many ways. And I genuinely, I am somebody who will defend an artist's, essential, like, right, like what gives you the right to, tell that story. Then I'm like, because it came into their head, you can tell whatever story you want to tell, right? But what I will say, and I will always, add this to my comment, but everybody also reserves the right to tell you that you got it totally wrong if you really screw up, right? That I don't think that your gender identity, your national identity, your spiritual affiliation, like religious affiliation, your age or sex or any of those things, like ethnic background, none of those things I think qualify you to tell a story or disqualify you from telling a story. But if you tell it poorly because you are ignorant and you just don't know what you're talking about, then just be prepared, because people have every right to say, you very obviously don't know what you're talking about.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I find that this comes up again and again and again anytime I see people who don't know anything about Christianity, who've only got a passing understanding, who put it into movies. Have you guys ever heard a real prayer in like a mainstream movie? Every family who ever prays for dinner goes like, "Oh, it's time for grace. Lord, we thank thou for thy bounty." And I'm like, I've never been at a table where somebody said, "We thank thou for thy bounty." Like,
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
you guys have never been in a house where people pray.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's so I look at that, I'm like, you can write it, even if you don't know what you're talking about, but I have the right to say fake news. That's that's not what happens. And
Yeah.
so I'm not saying that they were wrong in doing it, but boy, is that a terrible, terrible, terrible way of portraying anything to do with Indian history, religion, like Hinduism, cuisine.
Yeah.
I mean, like, oh,
Yeah.
there's so
Yeah.
much that's wrong with it.
Now, it has been a long time since I've seen it,
I
but
just saw it, so I'll help you out.
okay. But it does take place in India, yes?
Yeah, they
And I
magically
think
get to India. It is so
Yeah.
dumb how they all of a sudden get there.
Don't they're on a plane in the beginning, right? And then they
Yes.
like go on like this like tube down this like
Correct.
snow mountain thing.
Correct. Let me break it down for you. I think they're in Shanghai or something like that. They
Yeah.
get on a plane. Who knows how long it's been? The plane starts going down. They jump on an inner tube raft, basically coast all the way. They slide down the Himalayas. So they're going down Everest, like off like the Lhotse face, and then they're in India. Like,
Yeah.
and I'm like, okay, I don't care how good you are. You could get the best take the best 100 stunt people in Hollywood. Ask all 100 of them, if we put you in a plane, we ask you to jump in an inner tube from a plane onto the face of a mountain. You're going to slide down. It's going to be the Himalayas with jagged edges on this thing. And you're going to coast your way into a river that's not frozen for some reason, even though the Himalayas. And do you think you can actually pull this off? And every single stunt person is going to say, "Are you crazy? I have a family. Like, I'm not going to do that."
Yeah.
Like, no Marine would do that. Like, Navy SEALs won't do that. And yet everybody makes fun of Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. They go like, "Oh, they nuked the refrigerator in that." What happened in Temple of Doom? They
Yeah.
dropped the inner tube out of a plane.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's okay. Yeah, that's this is why I wanted to do the comparisons of like each of the
That's what I'm
two.
saying. Yeah, because Last Crusade is genuinely, like, I don't think it's a bad film. I think it's a
Right.
pretty good like kids movie, like family movie. Kingdom of the Crystal Skull we'll get to. Raiders I think is great. Temple of Doom, whoo.
Yeah.
So that's why
And
we're
then,
doing
like,
it this way.
Does it
Yeah.
like I'm probably wrong because I don't remember the last time I watched Temple of Doom, but doesn't Indiana Jones like know some of the people in India when he gets there?
Oh, I'm trying to think. I think so though. I think that it does come up.
Yeah, I think like haven't they seen him before and he did something for them once?
Yeah.
And then I'm like, but like, wow, what a coincidence! Like,
Oh, he can wander into any village in the world. He
yeah,
understands. He doesn't even understand just their current language. He's like,
yeah,
"Oh, this is the former dialect from 800 years
yeah,
ago." And it's like the locals in like a university are never going to be able to decipher that. Indy shows up and he's like, "Oh, it's Sanskrit. It means this." It's like, really?
yeah,
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter where it is. It's not like he's got 2 or 3 languages where he's pretty good. It's like every language, whenever it's convenient. Basically, like, he is just a cartoon character where he just opens up his pants and whatever he needs, he like pulls it out. It's like, there's my like, like Punjab to English dictionary right there. I didn't even know I was going to be in the Punjab region of India.
yeah.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Okay. So one of the reasons why I asked if I wanted to make sure that it does take place in India is I think that's one of the crucial issues with the villains is that he is going up against the indigenous culture.
Yep.
Mhm.
And like that just doesn't work the same way as if you have two disparate Western cultures going after
Exactly.
one, like it doesn't matter if it's, based in Christianity or, Judaism or anything else. As long as the villain is not part of the culture that Indy is like infringing upon. Let me put it that way. I think that's one of the issues because he's going to India and he's like, "Oh, what you guys are doing is wrong." And it's like, well, and I mean, like, obviously, again, it is not a good portrayal of India, but like, it's still like a weird kind of thing for him to be
Mhm.
going there and being like, "Oh, this isn't right." It's like, well,
Yeah.
it's not
I
your culture.
Yes, no, I think I understand what you're
Mhm.
saying, and yeah, that he can immediately go in there and then just say like, what you guys are doing is unethical, like this doesn't meet the
Yeah.
standards. It's like whose standards for one thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
uh yeah, and that to make that immediate judgment. But I know that like other people have criticized it for all kinds. I mean, like the criticism of Temple of Doom is, you know, it's staggering how much there is, in terms of actual cultural critics and film critics who have pointed out to all of the, I don't really like the term because it gets overused, but the problematic nature of the story. But I mean, like, if you're looking at it, like, you definitely have the white savior narrative,
Mhm.
um, and that there was nothing this village could do until Indiana Jones randomly showed up on a raft. And he's like, oh, okay, you need that stone back and your children on it. And then he just is going to fix this for them. It's like, okay. And then,
Yeah.
yeah, and like, absolutely, like, I don't understand. Like, I don't get it because I feel like they did this in, the Last Crusade. That were one of the, I can't remember if it's a group of people or one of the places that they go to. It's made up.
Mhm.
As in, you like, it sounds like something you'd find in the Middle East, but it's not a real place. I don't know why they didn't just do that, right? Just
Mhm.
invent a group of people instead of
Mhm.
saying
Yeah.
Indian people, because the so much of the film is very much a kids film. It's gross out humor. It's, that children love. It's, ew, look at all the gross stuff they're eating. And like
Mhm.
that whole dinner scene is like, that they're just trying to get people to squirm as much as possible, as you've got like
Mhm.
wriggling things and all of that.
Yeah.
But like, what do most people associate with most Indian cuisine? Like,
Curry, spicy
Mhm.
food.
well, there's
Yeah.
that, but a great number of Indian people are vegetarian. And they're
Right.
like, let's get people who are known for, like, many of them being vegetarian. Let's get them to eat the grossest stuff imaginable.
Right.
I'm like,
Yeah.
you could have them show up in this place and they're eating gross stuff, but just invent some ethnicity.
Mhm.
Yeah.
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 Like,
Mhm.
I don't know. I
It's true. In like some remote region where like maybe
yes.
these
Mhm.
these people are because you don't have to say, oh, there's this country that you've never heard of. It can literally just be like, oh, it's this undiscovered place
Sure.
Mhm.
where no one knew that it existed. So we can still kind of buy into
Yeah.
the fantasy of it being like, oh, okay, yeah, that is a thing that could still have happened back then.
Mhm.
Um, and just yeah, just have it be some other culture. That would
Yeah.
have helped.
Yeah, like not to make too many Marvel comparisons in this video, but like even what they did with like Wakanda, cuz like
Yeah.
it's believable, but like
Yeah.
that there would just be a group of Wakandans like that, and then so you could just do that, and I think that would fix a lot of the movie's problems because
And yeah, that's exactly it. Because that's a great example with Wakanda in general, because as best I remember it, like, Stan Lee developed that, did he not?
I he created Black Panther anyway.
Yeah.
I believe he created the rest. Like, I
That's
believe
what
he
I wasn't
wrote
sure. I knew
most
that
of like the first issues.
right. That's what that's where I'm saying like because I know that he developed Black Panther, but I wasn't sure if he also did the whole Wakanda and that history, or if it
Yeah,
was some other writer who came
I'm
after.
pretty sure how it went was because Black Panther first appeared in Fantastic Four, like a lot of characters back then, and I believe what happened was Fantastic Four like went to Wakanda or ended up there, and then that's how they found like Black Panther and all this. I'm pretty sure that's how it went. I'm not like 100%,
Yeah.
but so I do think that he came up with most of it. So
Yeah, but exactly. So you look at that, Stan Lee, clearly not African,
yeah,
who if it is him, and I believe that it was him who was at least in part responsible for the whole development of Wakanda, then it is possible to do this in a way that isn't like absurdly, offensive and stupid and yeah.
Yeah, you know that uh, just to do like a quick rewrite of Temple of Doom, you go to any country where or just a made up place, that's fine. And then instead of having this child that you stole from Shanghai, have it be a local child who just really wants to help and he keeps coming
yeah.
with you, even though you're like, no, I want you to be safe, get away from me. And then he
Yep.
can somehow help and do all the funny little stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
I think. Yeah, that would have worked a lot better.
yeah.
Do they
Yeah, do
even
we
explain like Short Round,
okay.
like where he
This
came
is
from?
right. So there we go. Now we can get into this. I wanted I wanted to find exactly where it is because I know that it comes up in the film, but I wanted to try to get it right as best I can. It'll just take me a minute to find it here.
Hmm. Because like they do start out in Shanghai.
Yeah,
Yes.
and then I'm pretty sure. Yeah, Short Round's like already with him because he's the driver, like
Right.
he's the getaway driver. So like,
Yeah.
and like,
Was it
what?
wait, wasn't he like I don't want to be making stuff up, but again, it has been a long time. Wasn't he like the getaway driver in like a rickshaw or something? Wasn't it?
Uh,
No?
I
I might
don't
be just
know.
making
Well,
that
it
up.
wasn't a rickshaw, but he is the getaway driver.
Oh, okay.
Um, yeah. What is it? I think he's in the boat. Isn't that it?
Uh, I don't know.
Let me see.
Um,
No, sorry, he was in a car. I'm getting
Yeah,
mixed up with the other
doesn't he
one.
have like the things on his feet so he can reach the pedals?
Yes, yeah. But
mhm.
in any case, I'll do my best to because I can't find it this quickly. But here's what happens: you're watching the movie. I don't know why Indiana Jones is now best friends with this like 10-year-old or 11-year-old Asian child. So it's not even like it's a family member. That's why I bring up the
Right.
Asian thing. Because I'm like, if it's like some like 10-year-old like white kid, then you're like, oh, maybe it's his nephew or a cousin or who
Mhm.
knows, right? But
Mhm.
instead, it's clearly they're not related. And there's no explanation for almost an hour and a half of the film. And then you finally get the backstory. And then basically it goes like this. Oh, his like the Japanese were like bombing the city or whatever in China, and so which was going on in the 30s because the Japanese were imperializing throughout Asia, right? So anyway, the kid's parents die, and then he ends up being like a street kid. Indiana Jones catches him pickpocketing him, and then
Oh, right.
decides I am now going to become best friends with you because he's not a parent. And they say this to each other. Like Short Round goes, "He's my best friend," and you're like, "Best friend?" Not like he's my guardian or
Yeah.
he's my adopted dad. It's like no, they're just best friends, and because he is grooming this kid to be just like him and like
Mhm.
and I do like I know that grooming behavior is like the kind of thing that we associate with obviously like abusing a child, right?
Mhm.
But he's teaching him to do all of these things just like himself. And you can see Short Round is just constantly trying to imitate him just so. And the insistence that this kid has on everybody calling him Dr. Jones. Hey, you call him Dr. Jones. Call him Dr. Jones. I'm like,
Yeah.
Are you demanding that this child call you Dr. Jones? That's creepy.
Yeah.
Why are you insisting on that? Like, you freaking weirdo. And I'm just saying, obviously, in 2019, if you meet an orphan child in Central Asia who has their hand in your pocket, do not just say, you're going to live with me from now on, especially as a single middle-aged white dude. I'm going to take you from your home country and like, well, your hand's already in my pocket, so now we're going to live together, right? Obviously, in 2019, you don't do that. But tell me when you would ever do that. At what point in human history is that ever appropriate? When does that ever make sense? Like, he's not married. He's never been a dad, as far as we can tell, until we get to Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, that he fathered a child, right? Am I getting that right? I haven't quite got to the Shia LaBeouf part, but
yeah, I don't know the full story there. I think it was like he didn't know that he had a son.
Right. So he never was actually an active parent, as far as I understand. Never married, never an active parent, never had any adopted kids or fostered children or anything like that. No experience working in childcare. But he's going to be the best person to raise this child now and put him in one dangerous situation after another. And this kid has got some serious Stockholm syndrome because he is identifying so much with his captor. Like, tell me that Indiana Jones did not just steal this child and is now like using him as a form of like child slave labor, just like the Indian people in this movie, because he is getting this kid to do things that this kid should never do. And he's putting him in much more dangerous situations than the people that Indiana Jones is trying to stop. The only difference is he did it with like hundreds or thousands of children, and his was specific and targeted to one particular kid. This kid doesn't even have any peers. He's just hanging out with his captor. I'm just like, I don't get it. When I look at this, and I'm not even trying to be funny with this. I'm saying I watched this and I was horrified.
I feel like there were.
I honestly have no idea who came up with this idea of
it was George Lucas. You know for a fact it was George Lucas. There's no way it wasn't him.
I feel like they were trying to like give Indiana Jones like, I feel like they took a lot of inspiration from like the comics then, because like heroes would have sidekicks. So I feel like that's what they were trying to do, but they just did it in like a way that was just completely different and not even good. But
yes, let's again compare this to Batman and Robin. Batman and Robin, there are some issues there.
Sure,
but it's not nearly the same because Bruce
not the same ballpark. It's not even close. Batman at least has a house. He lives there permanently. He's got money. He can send this kid to school.
He legally adopts him.
Him. Everybody's aware. Did Indy tell anybody that he did this? You don't get to just take a child, Indy. No.
So I feel like that's where they were trying to do, but they just didn't quite know what they were doing as much as the people who made the sidekick.
No, you're definitely correct. They were absolutely going for the sidekick thing, but the thing is that he is way too young to be a sidekick. He's not even a teenager. And so the thing is like, it makes no sense for other than marketing reasons of, if we put this kid in the film, we're going to get children who will really, really enjoy the film because they're going to see this kid who's kind of funny, who's doing heroic things, and therefore they're going to like the movie more and they'll tell their friends, right? But outside of that, then you look at this and you go, well, he's a child. Is he going to be able to help with any heroic stuff? No. He's a child. Is he going to be able to help with any intellectual stuff? Well, no. Like, he would be the worst sidekick imaginable. Like, you see how like tiny he is. That kid in a fight is beyond useless.
Does he? other than manual labor, is there any like specific task that he does that like
Definitely not.
only he could do, or only someone with his skills could do? No?
No, he's a
Okay.
child slave. He
Yeah.
is literally, that's what we're watching. How is nobody noticing the irony of this? That the entire plot of this movie is Indy is there to stop child slavery, but he also is a slave owner of a child.
Right.
Like, and like I say, at least the other people, they put them with a bunch of other children so they can at least commiserate about their plight, and they can, and like they're with each other, like they've got a shared language and history, and they're from the same town. This kid, it's like he can't even speak his first language to Indy unless he also happens to speak perfect Mandarin or Cantonese or whatever, which I'm sure he does somehow.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Okay. And this does again, I think that it's a big part of it is, yes, we want kids to be able to, have a better look on how can I become Indiana Jones. And I kind of want to save this for the next podcast, but I'm just going to say that, like, I feel like every single film is trying to train somebody else to be Indiana Jones to take over for Harrison Ford because he doesn't want to do it. Like
That
in
is
the first
hilarious.
one, and then the second one, they're like, he's like, I don't really want to do it. Can we have like a kid who's like learning? And they're like, sure. How about a 10-year-old? He's like, wait, that's not what I meant.
That is so funny, and that is so on character, like on point for Harrison Ford.
Yeah.
Has he ever had a role that he wants to continue doing? He steps into it, he does an amazing job, and then he's like, please don't let me be Han Solo anymore. They're like, you have to be. He's like, all right, here we go. And then it's like he does an amazing job as Indiana Jones. And he's like, I don't want to do this again. Please, Harrison, like, we'll give, how many dump trucks full of money do we have to give you? Like,
And
Yeah.
even wanting to be killed off in episode 6.
exactly. Like,
Yep.
He's just like, so I definitely think you're right, where he's just like, can you please find someone else to be Indiana Jones? And they
Yep.
they just can't.
yeah,
They're like, Last Crusade. It will be my last crusade. You can have, the girlfriend. She can like start to learn some stuff, and she can take over for me.
right.
Isn't that like kind of what happens in Last Crusade? And then,
Well,
and
she's
then,
kind of a bad guy in it, but yeah.
anyway, and then like you do get the flashbacks to him as a kid, which of course led into the Young Indiana Jones
Right.
series.
Yeah.
Right.
Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, they're like, look, Indiana Jones has a child, so now Shia LaBeouf can be Indiana Jones. Every single time, they're like, let's introduce another character who
And
can just take the mantle, and it just
How-
doesn't
Yeah.
work.
Right. And how on point is this for George Lucas of he has no idea how to move on. He gets an established
Yeah.
group of characters and he's like, now that's going to lead into a whole other. And it's like, everybody's like, no,
Yeah.
no, we don't want new ones. This one sucks. Go back to the original. He's like, oh, but I'm trying. How about this? And it's like, no, that didn't work either, buddy.
Yeah.
Oh man.
It's like he's just it's so funny because he's just such a victim of like you've got one good idea and then you just keep trying. He should just know that. He should just be doing one-offs.
Yeah.
Right. Harrison Ford seems to keep trying to do that.
Yeah.
All right. I do want to talk about more of the good with Raiders of the Lost Ark,
Sure.
though. No, they're
Sure.
not good in Temple of Doom. I don't think there is much there. But good in Raiders of the Lost Ark. We talked about, that opening sequence being absolutely incredible. One moment that really stands out to me is him discovering the snake while he's in the plane during the getaway.
Yeah.
And that's how we get the reveal of
Yeah.
him hating snakes, of him
Correct.
being afraid of snakes. That is just so brilliant, like perfect
Yeah.
writing.
It's so well done because it's doesn't hit you over the head with it. It's fairly subtle. It's within it. It's not that's not the point of the scene, right? The
Right.
point of the scene
Yeah.
when you're watching it from a plot perspective is you're just hoping that he's going to be able to get away, and then
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
happens to come up, and it's kind of like a, oh, by the way, in a natural way, then you realize that. But it's also very much like introducing a gun in Act 1, and you know that it's going to go off by Act 3, that you know that you get the snake there, and then you're like, you know, you're going to see snakes again because he says, I hate snakes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right, Tyler. That's a really good piece of writing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because I absolutely love that. It's frustrating, I think, seeing all the other Indiana Jones movies trying to squeeze in snakes somewhere.
Oh,
Trying to be like, we have to have Indiana Jones be not able to do something. How do we do it? Snakes. Oh, all right. Yeah, it'll just be a room full of snakes. That's just how snakes live, right? They just live.
Oh
like,
yeah,
all
I
together.
know the amount of times where like they do that with all kinds of things, with snakes, with rats, with insects.
my
Then I'm
goodness,
like,
yeah.
they all just live in piles. They're just piled on top of each other. That's a natural environment for them. You just come across like a pile 10 feet deep of snakes. Like, sure, that's where they all are. I've heard there's a lot of snakes in the world. They're all in one place.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've oh my goodness.
But then in the Last Crusade, then like they think like, oh, well, we really need to get into the whole history of him being afraid of snakes. And
Right.
so like I just wanted to bring that up because he's totally not afraid of snakes, because you see it at the beginning that there's a snake, and then his friend is scared and he's like, oh, it's just a snake, and he's like holding it, and then he like does whatever with it. And then he's on that circus train, and then he falls into a whole crate of snakes, because again, that's how snakes live apparently. Like nobody keeps snakes like that. What are they thinking?
Like you're transporting these snakes to like a circus, and they just keep them in this room all together, and there's like
like that deep.
Yeah.
And just snakes the whole way up.
Like, what are they planning on doing for like releasing all of them? Just being like, all right, just tip over the bucket, and then we'll just let them go to do their thing.
What circus features crates full of snakes?
Yeah.
What kid goes to the circus and goes, I can't wait until I see the snake do what? The trapeze or something? I don't get it. What? Why would they have snakes? Doesn't even make sense.
Yeah.
But he falls into that, and then he like gets like a snake like in his shirt, and he just like, and then it's so traumatizing. We get to see the trauma of where this fear of snakes comes from. And then it's just one of those things of like, you are over explaining. Why can't it just be one of those things of just like, he's freaked out by snakes? Need I say more? Like, that's it.
Yeah.
Some people are freaked out by stuff.
Yeah.
It me you had a traumatic experience when you were younger.
Yep. All right. The other scene I really want to talk about, though, is the face melting scene.
Oh, there we go.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Yeah.
It really is. From a special effects standpoint, and I have been so disappointed with the special effects in Temple of Doom and The Last Crusade, but I find that the special effects in Raiders of the Lost Ark, they hold up. But the other two films, they really don't. They look like the same quality of special effects of, it's a superimposition of, they obviously filmed the background, and then they filmed this like object, whether it's like the, you know, trolley car in the Temple of Doom, or like some person falling off of the bridge, or like a car or whatever. They obviously are just superimposing it. It is the same level of special effects that you get in the 1930s and 40s in Hitchcock movies. I'm not making it up. If you watch Hitchcock movies, which have got, you watch it and you go, this was 1936, that's pretty good. And then you watch this and you go, that's 1984? That's pretty bad.
Yeah.
Because you had like Star Wars already. You know, you look at that and you're just like, Star Wars holds up pretty well when it comes to special effects. And then you see some of this stuff, and I'm like, how is this Spielberg? I don't understand how he let that go as a final print. Like, I don't get it.
Yeah.
I think, like, it seems like that's almost like something like George Lucas, like, obviously was all over that. Because, like, I think that was a lot of what he was trying to do, especially because then the prequels, and that is, like, so CGI heavy.
Yeah.
And so I think it was like more of him just like, I don't know why he likes using CGI so much more than practical, or at least after, or pretty much like when he's not doing the original trilogy of Star Wars. Well, even though he only did like A New Hope, or directing anyway. So I feel like then, like with all his other stuff, he just really likes using CGI instead of practical, and I don't really know why. Like that's such a weird decision.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
Yeah.
I don't understand. But yeah, the special effects to me, like they don't hold up. And it's frustrating when you're watching it because yeah, they're just all kinds of clunky. But in Raiders, they hold up, and that face melting scene, like that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, oh my goodness, it is horrifying.
It really is horrifying. That is the correct word for it. It is horrifying.
How did they do that? Like, what
I'm
did they do
assuming
to
it's
do that?
time lapse, like it's or not time lapse photography, but it would be
like
stop motion with wax, like with a wax head. That's my guess, is that they like melted it and then they did stop motion where it like more and more and more, but like you get like a really good wax head, and then just you apply heat, and then it just, and you can like touch it up in between doing it. It would take a long time, but you could do it and it would look really cool, which I'm pretty sure that's how they did it.
Yeah. Yeah, I love how, you know, Indy just knows. He's like, just don't open your eyes. Just don't open your eyes.
Yes.
And
That's
it's just it's just so fantastic to see that he knows the myth. He knows the truth of it, even though it is, you know, all this mystical mumbo jumbo. Like he's at that point, he's like, no, this is definitely a real thing.
Yes. And that's what I really like about Raiders of the Lost Ark. And to some degree, where I think it kind of corrects itself with The Last Crusade, is this is why I was saying that I don't like, one of the things that I don't like about Temple of Doom is that you go outside of an established myth or you know, piece of, let's say, like biblical textual, a biblical story, that at least with that, then we've got established parameters and we know what we're dealing with. And it makes sense that Indiana Jones would be familiar with this, and that he is enough of a skeptic that I think for most people when they're watching it, they appreciate that about him, because he's supposed to be a scientist, you know, he's an archaeologist, and it's like, well, there's a lot of myth in human history and most of it is just not true, and there's all kinds of reasons why myths would get passed on and why people would say that it's true, whether it's true or not. But basically he needs to have, you know, a fair bit of empirical evidence before he's going to believe something, which fits with his character. But then at the same time, he's not so much of a skeptic that he can't possibly accept the supernatural when it's obviously occurring. And so I like the fact in that film, and it's another thing that I really like about Raiders, is that all of, like, you are being, all of the supernatural stuff is withheld, because there's really nothing until the very, very end. And then it's almost like a little bit of a twist on it, that you're like, you're dealing with archaeology, you're dealing with myth, and a lot of it is just not true. And it's like, oh, enough of it's true, like, you know, oh, that is actually where it's buried, oh, it's a real object, and like, you know, you're like, oh, okay, you're starting to believe it a little bit more, almost like a horror story, where you're just like, oh, that's just a story. And then you start getting a little bit of evidence, and you're like, well, maybe it's not just a story, because now we've got this piece of evidence and that. And then it's like, well, if that's true, and if that's true, then that's true, then what else might be true? So it's like, oh, like there is actually something, you know, this whole miniature version of the city is actually here when he goes into that tomb. And then if you hold up the staff at the right time of the day, and then it goes through there, and then it actually points to the place, oh, well, that actually is true. And then it's like, oh, there's actually this thing that sure looks exactly as it's described in the Bible, with the Ark of the Covenant, with the angels and the wings and all of that. And you're like, oh, okay, so that part's real. So then it's like, well, if all of that's true, then maybe everything with it is true,
Mhm.
and therefore you should not touch this thing, and you
Yeah.
sure shouldn't open this thing. And
Mhm.
that's where I go, ooh, that film works really well because
Yeah.
Indiana Jones is skeptical until he has enough evidence, and then he's a believer.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But then with Temple of Doom is just straight up inventions the entire time, and you get supernatural stuff like going on through much of the movie with like, I guess the dude got the power from Kali where he's got superhuman strength to reach into somebody's chest and pull out their heart. Is that how that worked?
I don't even remember.
Like, why is he able to do this? And the thing that I don't
Yeah.
understand in that is like he does it to Indiana Jones towards the end, and he just starts like
And-
pushing, and then like he doesn't quite break through, and then
Yeah.
Indiana Jones is like, oh, oh,
Yeah.
oh. And I'm like,
Yeah.
what? I don't get it. Why are you so sore? Like,
Yeah.
wouldn't it either be like, isn't it just like nothing and then like all the way through your chest cavity? I don't understand this whole.
Yeah. And like I feel like everyone else in the movie before him who he does that to, like they have like no reaction, I feel like, until like they've pulled
Right.
out the heart and then they're like,
Right.
"Oh my goodness." But
Yeah.
he is like injured the whole time, and then like it's just such a like difference in of his reaction compared to everyone else.
We
Yeah.
need tension.
And then
Look like
at
you're in pain. Okay.
I know the amount of times though in Temple of Doom, he just gets injured, and then you're just like, well, that's going to take him a good month in the hospital in like intensive care to recover. But then he's fine 3 minutes later, and then
Yeah.
it's like, and it happens again and again and again. And you just go, oh, okay, it's a cartoon. Like there are no stakes with this, but you want there to continually be stakes within each scene, and then they just
Yeah.
evaporate. Like,
Yeah, like one of the things that I think Temple of Doom did that really took out the stakes before the final like battle, I guess, was that like mining cart ride that they did, because like isn't there like a point where there is like no track and they go over it
yep,
and then they land on the other
they
side?
land
Like
on it
it's
perfectly.
yeah, and it's just so stupid because
That's
I
that doesn't
remember
make
that.
sense.
right. That's what I'm saying. You have multiple things in Temple of Doom where you just, if you don't roll your eyes after
Yeah.
watching that, like
Yeah.
I don't know who you are. I don't know how it's possible to do that. And then I'm going, I don't know why people were so offended by Kingdom of the Crystal Skull and nuking the refrigerator, where it's like he survived a nuclear explosion in a lead-lined refrigerator. I'm like, have you guys not seen Temple of Doom? Like they jumped
Yeah.
out of an airplane in this thing, and then like all of a sudden they're fine down Everest, and then they're in India like that. Like, yeah, they're on this trolley car that for some reason, Tyler, you're really interested in roller coasters. Tell me the physics of how that thing continually goes faster and faster when they're going
Yeah.
uphill multiple
Yeah.
times. Tell me the physics behind this. And then,
I cannot.
okay, there's no brake run. There's no anything like that. There's
Yeah.
no lift hill. There's no magnets. There's nothing.
That
Like,
mining cart has the same power as the main villain, and it just like when it's reaching the hand into the chest, that's like the mine cart but going uphill.
oh yeah, that's exactly it. But yeah, they do. There's no track. They just like do that,
Yeah.
and then they perfectly land on the
Yeah.
other side. That like you can't watch it and not roll your eyes.
Yeah. Man, it is fantastic that they were sitting so perfectly still that they
Yeah.
had adjusted themselves with the weight distribution. Oh, no, let's not lean too far forward, too
Right.
far back. No, we gotta.
And then yeah, he stops the thing with his boot.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
He really does. And then he like is desperate for water. Water as his boot
Yeah.
is smoking. And then you get this like massive wall of water, which makes no sense because it was just this like big reservoir tank that like toppled over. And for some reason, the entire tube, like that whole tunnel, and there's multiple tunnels, they all perfectly fill with water as if it was the ocean that just got let in there. I'm like, all that it would happen, it would be filled for the first little bit, and then it would just disperse, and it'd be like maybe like a foot high. Like it would just be a little trickle by the time it got to them. But instead, it's just gushing for like minutes.
Oh man.
Yeah, and I know
clearly need to rewatch this.
it's really bad. It took me, I would say, 2 weeks to watch it because I had to stop it. I'm not kidding. I would say a good dozen times because I just kept stopping and going, "This is so stupid. What am I watching?" But
I feel like I feel like a lot of the reason why people didn't like Kingdom of the Crystal Skull a lot more than Temple of Doom is because I feel like Temple of Doom was just like, yeah, we're gonna go all out with the
yes,
campiness and unbelievable stuff, but
yeah,
like with Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, I felt like they were going for more of a serious like feel to it, but then doing a whole lot of unbelievable stuff in it.
yeah,
So
and
Yeah, I think it's partly that, and it's partly like they had what, like 30 years to get a good story,
that's a good
yeah,
point.
and that's what we get. Like,
yeah.
That's a good point. I mean, yeah, there's a lot with that, which we'll get into with the next podcast. I
Mhm.
think Tyler, like what we were talking about with Stranger Things, it's like what our refrain with that was they need to choose what this show is. Is this show a grounded, down to earth, realistic show where there are genuine stakes and these characters are legitimately in danger and you fear for them? Or is this off the wall, campy, slapstick, random musical sequences in the midst of it, and it's just a great
Yeah.
big comedy? And that's basically like what I think Temple of Doom is. Temple of Doom is to Raiders what Stranger Things seasons 2 and 3 are to Stranger Things season 1.
Mm-hmm.
Even with the opening sequence of Temple of Doom, you look at that and it's just like you're not watching the same thing at all. It is literally a song and dance number from the
Yeah.
1930s. It's a musical.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, I'm smiling so much because I
'Cause
have rewatched that musical number from Stranger Things
did
3
did you watch it
so
on
many
loop? What I
times.
sent you with like
No,
8 hours
I didn't
straight
watch
of
that one, but I have watched. I've watched it a few times.
Oh my goodness. I literally I feel like I need some kind of like repression therapy to get that out of my head. Oh,
Uh,
oh, it
okay,
upset me so much.
uh, all right, getting back to stuff that's really, really good though, and I know we should probably wrap this up fairly soon, but uh, Raiders of the Lost Ark is so incredibly good. You are along for the ride, along for the journey, along for, like this discovery, right? Like he is like traveling all over the place. You have so much good in it where, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that's the one where there's like the plane that just like it's got the propeller that's going and totally takes out a
Yes.
guy.
Yes.
Yes.
When he's gonna fight that big, like the guy is
Yeah,
like
Yeah.
huge and he's
that's
totally gonna
another great
take him.
sequence.
Yeah.
I
Uh,
love that. I love when, when Indy is confronted by the guy with
The
like the
scimitars.
yeah, with the scimitar.
yeah.
And then he just pulls out the gun and shoots. I'm just like, this is amazing. Like,
Yeah,
that's who Indiana Jones should be. It's like, well, he's not the biggest, toughest guy.
Mhm.
exactly.
He
Yeah.
can, figure his way out of these things.
Mhm.
And that's what's so good. Even when, he's like hopping from truck to truck during that whole
Yeah.
sequence, then it's still like, yeah, he's able to, wiggle his way out, so to speak.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Whereas I feel like in Temple of Doom, he's just almost not quite superhero, but like action hero,
He's
you know?
much more of an
Yeah.
action hero, down to the fact that like they have long sequences in the film where he's literally just not wearing a shirt and you can see
Yeah.
that he's, like obviously like been working out before that film,
yeah.
that um yeah, I mean like and they've like they oiled up his body and he's tanned and he's like got a little bit of like the scruff and he's just he's like
yeah.
fighting everybody and yeah,
Yeah.
it's totally different than this scrappy underdog who spends a lot of his life as an academic in
Mhm.
books and all of that, who also does the practical element of being an archaeologist, where you get that balance between the two of them. And instead you get kind of like Rambo light in, Temple of Doom.
Yeah.
And that the issue with that is he no longer is a realistic character, because
and that's why people wanted to be Indiana Jones, because he was grounded, because he was just this, this guy who was an archaeologist, was a professor, he was a real person, and we were able to relate with him. And then we're like, oh, he's so awesome. And Temple of Doom is even supposed to take place before Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah.
Which makes no sense.
Well,
where did Short Round go?
Where did anyone go in this whole thing? But absolutely, what on earth happened to Short Round? I don't get that. And then his relationship with what's her name? The ditzy blonde.
Yeah. I don't even know.
Where I mean, that's, look, I'm not saying that movies always have to do this, but it's like, there's a real empowering role for women. Like, she's like such a terrible character. She's so absurd throughout the entire thing.
Compared to Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Right.
Her name is Mary? Yes?
I think so. Something like that.
Anyway, she is so compelling. She owns her own bar and everything. And man, it gets burned down, and you're you feel for her, oh my goodness, such a well-written character. And then we go,
she is.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that her and Indy have this interesting backstory that you don't quite get into, but that she's upset with him, and probably for good reason, and that she's now got her own bar, and with these rough characters who come in there, but she can hold her own against them, but in a way that is believable, right? That she can drink them under the table, but so it's not it's not stupid where it's oh, she's so tough that she's beating every guy in there at arm wrestling. Instead it's I could see her having a liver that is, able to withstand that. Sure, that physical characteristic I can buy, and you're absolutely, and she's scrappy like that throughout the film, and that's what pairs her well with Indiana Jones, because he's also a scrappy underdog, right? Where she gets captured by that creepy, I don't know, is he French, the other archaeologist?
I don't even know what he is, but the dude in black, all black, and he's got the fedora. I think he's got a fedora anyway.
Oh, not that guy, but the one who's wearing the white suit, where he forces her to put on the dress, and the way she tries to get away from him, right? And she tries to drink him under the table in order to escape, right? That the whole thing, it's that fits with her character, and that she's holding her own. And then you look at the next film, and you're just this is I'm not a woman, and I am so offended by this. Right?
Yeah.
She's just the worst depiction of a woman. It makes no sense that she's concerned about her fashion and her hair in the midst of a life and death thing. And,
what is her backstory in the Temple of Doom? Because I don't even remember. Doesn't she just join it in the very beginning with Indiana Jones?
Yeah, he saved her because I think they were going to, basically it went something like this. She's a lounge singer there in Shanghai, and then her life was being threatened by the thugs that Indy was trying to negotiate with. So then he ultimately saves her from that, and then in order to escape from the thugs, then she kind of goes alongside with him, and then she's just stuck with him, and then stuck with him in this foreign country, and just goes along for the ride. So there was no purpose in having her in the film. She didn't contribute anything, just like Short Round, who contributed nothing. You've just got these random characters beside Indiana Jones, and you don't have very good villains in it either.
Yeah, a lot of Temple of Doom is just they know what they wanted to do with Indiana Jones, but they didn't know what they wanted to do with anything else.
Anyone else.
Yeah.
And I mean, it just seems well, it's a Hollywood big budget film. So what do we do then if it's a Hollywood big budget film? Get a pretty blonde to star in it.
Yeah.
Okay, what's her role? She's pretty and she's blonde. Oh, okay. And I take it that she's gonna, be there for the male, like our leading male, to have some kind of romantic interest. Yep. And he'll save her. Sure. And how is she going to be scrappy? She kind of will not go for his advances, except she really is desperately wanting his advances.
Yeah.
That's basically it. That's her. And you're like, groundbreaking. This is.
It is so telling that I do not remember her character at all. Like, I can't even picture her face compared again to Raiders of the Lost Ark, where I'm like, yeah, that's a fully fleshed out character.
I think in Raiders, I think it's Marion, I want to say.
Oh,
I think it's Willie is the blonde's name in Temple of Doom. Like, it's short for something, but I think he calls her Willie.
Okay.
As strange as that is, I'll look it up. That's kind of... I'm not making this up. I'm pretty sure that's what he calls her.
Yeah.
Again, you can make a lot of this, like his love interest, he insists on calling Willie. He spends more time with the child than he does with the blonde. I'm sorry, I'll stop. But I'm just saying. Kate Capshaw as Willie Scott, an American nightclub singer working in Shanghai. That's her name, Willie. Doesn't even have a real first name. Just her name is Willie.
All right. I'm sorry to any women who are actually named Willie, but that just seems like a really odd choice.
You have offended 0 women because no woman is named Willie. What? No one named Willie. Come on. Like who has a little kid like, oh, she's beautiful. What shall we name her? Willie. I.E. Willie.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that's
Yeah, that's her name.
All right.
But I think Spielberg married her.
Really?
Oh, I think you're right. Yeah.
Huh.
What a weird role to have your wife in. I'm sure they weren't married at the time, but
because apparently this is like the little bit that I heard. So Spielberg and George Lucas, I guess, were both going through divorces at the time, and they say that's why the movie's bad. I'm not making this up. They both say, "Oh, I don't really like the movie. I don't really like the movie." They say, "Ooh, the dark themes of the movie. It's probably because we were in a dark place." Everybody says the movie's dark. I'm like, it's the silliest, most slapstick movie I've ever seen. They're like, but child labor. I'm like, child labor with no stakes. They're like, but he ripped somebody's heart out. Yeah, like in a cartoon. Have you ever just tried to describe a Bugs Bunny cartoon? Like, there's some like pretty intense stuff in that, but it's all about tone, people.
Yeah.
And so anyway, yeah, they were like going through breakups. So they're like, oh, we weren't really in it. And we were like in dark places. That's why it's not very good. Okay. And then Spielberg says, but the one like good thing that came out of Temple of Doom is that I met my wife, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, you met her, but you also gave her the worst role that you could possibly.
Yeah.
This is what I think of you, sweetheart. You are going to be a dumb, ditzy blonde who's completely unnecessary to the plot. Like, oh, aren't I a pretty great catch, huh? Don't you love me?
I wrote this role myself.
Yeah, I wrote this for you. I saw you and I just had to write this role for you.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. Well, that's about all I have to say about these two films.
I just have one more question about Temple of Doom. Like, doesn't like some like army come in at the end to help Indiana Jones?
Yeah.
Like, where did they come from?
No idea.
Like...
there's some British soldier who's like leading the way, and then he tells the I think they're Indian soldiers. He's like, fire at those other Indian people, and they're like, all right, British soldier. Right? like obviously it was colonial India at the time, and the British Empire did control it, so it does make sense within the history of it. But but as far as like the depiction of all of this, but if you look at I don't even know what is the climax of Temple of Doom compared to the climax of Raiders of the Lost Ark? Because Raiders of the Lost Ark has got such a great climax, which Tyler, you brought up, like the face melting scene, and you know, you get the
and even Indy, like, begging them, like, don't open it, don't open
there's
it.
tension
Like,
there.
yeah.
And that's the whole thing. The entire movie is, can we find this thing? If we find it, does it actually have all these properties that we think it actually has? What's going to happen when we open it? So you want to know, you want to know, you want to know. When you're watching Temple of Doom, what are we working towards?
Yeah.
Just this random Indian village of like, we had a stone, the stone is now gone. Oh, and by the way, all of the children from the village are gone too. Either or. You could find either one. All of our children or that stone.
It's almost more like they want the stone more.
They definitely want the stone more.
Yeah, they're like, could you please respect the stone, and if it's not too much, maybe the children too.
If you can. If it's a question of the 80 children or the stone, get the stone. It definitely seems to be that, because they're like, all of the joy left our village when the stone was taken, and our children disappeared when the stone was taken. And you're just like, so you just want the stone back to what? Like, be all happy, like, whoo, no more kids. I didn't like them anyway. But the whole thing is, what's the point of that plot? Like, what are they trying to resolve other than get the stone back? I guess rescue these kids that we randomly meet, like more than halfway through the film. And then at the end, it's just the climax is them on that suspension walking bridge. And then I think they're crocodiles. They don't even look like alligators. But anyway, there's crocodiles or alligators under the bridge, which makes no sense that they're all in a pile, because every animal exists in a pile. And then every single time a person falls off, they cut to this super, like, obvious that this was not shot in the same place. Like, the background of, like, the wall is not the right color as what the cliffs are in the regular like establishing shot of where the suspension bridge is. But they keep falling off of the bridge, and then they fall into the pit of crocodiles.
Yeah.
Then immediately all you see is a little bit of torn fabric. Like, these crocodiles, number one, they're able to withstand a person falling like 200 feet on top of them. That didn't hurt them at all. Okay. They didn't like submerge after, like, and then they are such skilled eaters that they are able to separate the clothing from the flesh and just eat the person's body, and just like, I don't want that shirt.
And in seconds.
And in seconds, they're able to do that. That's the climax. Randomly, people falling off of a suspension footbridge into a pit of crocodiles in deep water. That's why I'm saying it doesn't make sense they're crocodiles, but they don't have alligators there. I don't even know if they have crocodiles there.
I think these crocodiles or alligators should be the next main villain of the next Indiana Jones movie, or the myth that they're going after is, what is up with these supernatural crocodiles?
Right, and they're all, like I say,
they're
they're all concreted in one pit, and people just keep falling directly into that, even though they're falling off different parts of the bridge. Every time they fall, it's that one little clump.
Oh man, the villain of the next film has to be the rat catcher. he's or like the Pied Piper or whatever. Like, he's just able to get animals of all types to just squish together.
That's right.
Piles. He's been the secret villain behind every Indiana Jones.
Yes, exactly. But that's I guess the climax of Temple of Doom. That thing that has no stakes. It doesn't even make sense. But that's the ending. It's kind of them on the cart going through the mines, and then all of a sudden they're on this bridge, and that every scene in it, though, I find is overlong. That entire movie, I just was like, okay, let's move this scene along. Like, even them riding on those carts, that was such an obvious. It just seems so transparent to me of like, let's do that because we can make a ride out of this at a theme park. And it lost all suspense for me, at least when I was rewatching it, because the track for it, that would be the longest track ever for some kind of a mine. They've never have things. Yeah.
And for some reason it's broken, or they just didn't finish one part of it.
Right. Just the one section. Oh man.
But yeah, all right. So we'll get into The Last Crusade and then Kingdom of the Crystal Skull in the next podcast, and we'll probably come back a little bit to Raiders and Temple of Doom. But
for sure.
Yeah. Anyone watching, feel free to comment below and tell us what you think. I know that a lot of people really, really enjoy Temple of Doom, but my question would be, if you love Temple of Doom, how old were you when you first saw it? Because I think people who don't like Crystal Skull, I think the reason why they were expecting something much, much better is because they saw Kingdom of the Crystal Skull when they were adults, but they saw Temple of Doom when they were children. Because I don't know if you had a bunch of 10-year-olds going to Kingdom of the Crystal Skull saying, I hated it. That was a cinematic disaster. I think a lot of kids probably watched it and went, cool. I didn't know that you could survive a nuclear explosion in a refrigerator. And then parents are like, you can't. But just like with Temple of Doom, it's cool. I didn't know you could jump out of a plane with a raft and slide down a mountain and end up in a river and then end up in India. And parents are like, you can't. No, please don't even try that. And it's oh, I saw it in the movie. It looked pretty real. Yeah, that'd be my only my only request is that if you do really like Temple of Doom, how old were you when you saw it?
Right. Yeah.
How old were you when you saw it, Tyler?
That's a good question. I had to have been pretty young, I don't know, probably around 10.
Okay.
When I first saw it. I don't know though, because we have it on a VHS that we recorded off a TV or something. I know that we have that with Raiders of the Lost Ark. And I just realized now that none of our audience will understand this. So we used to be able to record TV, and when they play a movie.
How old do you think my audience is?
Sorry, any of my friends or people who I work with, they're too young.
Yeah, better. Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's so I would have seen it, I don't know, sometime, yeah, probably when I was 10, so really young. But
did you like it at the time?
Or
you just can't remember?
I can't remember. I remember liking Raiders of the Lost Ark though.
Yeah. It's hard not to like that movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess we're good then.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for watching. Like I say, please comment below, especially if you can tell me when you watched Temple of Doom for the first time, how old you were, and if you really like it. And watch it again if you don't mind. Tell me if you still like it. What was that, Ty?
Support our sponsors.
Yes, please. Please, both of them. What's the fedora? What is it?
It's the hipster fedora.
Fedora.
When you really care about looking like you really don't care.
What does it retail for, by the way?
$58.
Oh, that's pretty good. Canadian or American?
That is a good question. I'll have to follow up with our sponsors. I believe it is American though.
Okay. All right. All right, folks. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye.
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 Ignore the bell, people. We're gonna keep going. We're still ignoring it. Don't worry. I don't know what that. I think that's the fire drill. All right. We're gonna go home. Yeah. All right. We're done.